Candidates, what's your position on eminent domain? That is, the government taking of private property for public or other private use when the owner does not wish to sell.
Well, to me, property rights are absolutes. I would never, never, never support the government taking anyone's property. If I say never a few more times, does that nail it home? When someone takes your property without your consent, it's called stealing. And it doesn't change just because the government does it. If the government takes your property and you don't want them to, it's still stealing. And stealing is not the basis of a peaceful and prosperous society. If somebody wants your property, then they offer you money for it, they offer to purchase it from you, and you have the option to accept or decline it. There is no justification for taking someone's property from them without their consent, and I would never support any eminent domain or any government taking of anyone's property without their consent. Yes, as David mentioned, there is a provision in the Constitution for eminent domain for very narrow circumstances, but that's where I think one of the ways the Constitution is flawed. The Constitution allows the government to steal your property under a given condition. Well, it's still stealing, it's still taking your property. So the Constitution should be modified or amended to take this into account. There should be no theft allowed, and there shouldn't be provisions or clauses for certain types of theft as being legitimized.
Candidates, how do you prioritize quote-unquote moral issues such as same-sex marriage, abortion, flag burning, and the Pledge of Allegiance in schools on your agenda in comparison to political issues such as the economy, the environment, immigration, and so on?
To me, I think every issue can be broken down or distilled down into freedom versus control. Does a law that the government passed infringe on your freedom to do as you want without infringing on anyone else's freedom? Now, the issue of same-sex marriage or abortion or flag burning or the environment or the economy, these things can all be broken down into their component pieces. So, for instance, same-sex marriage. If there was a law, well, there is a law, banning same-sex marriage, to me, I don't think the government should have any involvement in marriage at all. Marriage should be a private contract between two, maybe more people, if that's what they're into. That's between them. That's nobody else's business, and they can call whatever they want. The government should have no involvement in that, and if the government's going to stop people from doing that, they're infringing on people's freedom. They're not forcing anyone to recognize it. The same thing is true when it comes to the economy. If you take people's money, if you tell them how they can spend their money, if you regulate what they can do with their time, you are infringing on their freedoms. And as long as they're acting peacefully and they're not infringing on anyone else's freedom, the government should be completely hands-off from that. So all of these issues, I think, break down into those core components.
Thank you, Nick.
The reason most of these seem to be big issues, to me, is because they're public. Education, for instance, is pretty much monopolized by the government, and you don't really have much of a choice as far as how you're going to educate your children, except that you're still going to pay for the public system even if you don't use it. So I think the answer here is really more privatization. If I have an issue with the grocery store that I go to, I don't need to hold a town hall meeting and try and do an election every 2 years. I just go to a different grocery store. It's really, I think it's pretty simple. If we were to privatize most of this stuff, we would have a lot more options, a lot more competition. Just get the government out of the way and we can fix this.
Thank you. Our final question. This goes to personal experience. Candidates, please tell us about a time when your principles and judgment were tested in a crisis.
I think my entire campaign for this election cycle has been a pretty good test. I mean, I'm not going out and talking to Libertarians. I've already got all 12 of their votes in the I'm going out and I'm talking to groups that, in many cases, completely disagree with me. If I was just up here trying to get your vote, I might say that we should build a 50-foot concrete wall on the southern border that no Olympian will ever be able to go over. But instead, I tell you that I actually oppose SB 1070, that I think the government's actions toward immigration are the wrong way to go, and they don't solve the problem. I go into liberal groups and I talk to them about the economy. I say the government should have no involvement. There should be no minimum wage. Taxes should pretty much go away completely, and every interaction should be voluntary. Socialists don't like it when you tell them that there shouldn't be universal health care. But you say it in front of those groups because that's what you believe, not because you're trying to necessarily get their vote. What I'm trying to do is change people's minds, and I don't waver from my principles, and I think through this election cycle, anyone who's been paying attention to my campaign, what I've been doing, presentations that I've given, interviews that I've given, can pretty much follow that and attest to it. I especially want to thank everyone for having me here, because I'm not actually running against any of them until they weed themselves down to one. I've got my primary pretty much locked up. One of the things that I like that I've been able to do is basically field all the questions that have been asked of me personally through my website and through phone calls. I've had a lot of people email me questions asking for clarification. I've had a lot of people call me at my office, and I return every one of my calls and all of my emails personally, because I really enjoy engaging with people and talking to them and clarifying what my positions are and what I think the actual solutions to problems are. You can definitely find out more at nickcoonsforcongress.com. I've got all my information there. There's an easy contact form. You can email me, you can mail me, you can call me. I'm definitely available, and I will be personally responding to any of your questions that you have. So again, thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks, Nick.